Hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry about the slight delay. We've got some construction in the alley, a little bit of internet challenges. We're back up and running. Welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to talk about some routing between two different consoles. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Hopefully I'm coming through just fine. But I recently got a request or a question that came through from a subscriber, and I want to pull that up, kind of read through it, and I think it might be interesting to discuss today in terms of the various different components that this person is trying to do. So give me a second. I'm going to switch over to my, my computer here. Let's see. All right, now we're going to be able to connect the mixer to the PC. There we go. That's good as well. Well, let's load up X32 Edit. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the request that this person had, as well as just the settings on X32 Edit. This is going to be connecting two different consoles, is effectively what we're talking about, but I think that the intricacies of his setup is going to bring this up to us in something that's important and valuable to look at. So if I can get my computer to stay on one screen, that'd be helpful. And all right, let's go ahead and pull this up here. So I'm going to switch you guys over there. All right, here is the request that came in. So it says, Dave, I've got a Midas M32 for front of house and a Midas M32 for my live broadcast. So that's pretty sweet. He's got two different consoles. With the Midas DL32 stage box, this is already a sweet setup, right? So the front of house is a primary console, and the DL32 is connected to it on AES50A. So stage box coming across AES50A into his main console. One thing to note, if you're not familiar with this, I've got a link in the description of this video. You can go and watch it afterwards, but what are the settings that you need to do to connect two different consoles? Because you kind of have a master console and a slave console. One that is the initialization is coming across AES50A. So in this case, he's got the two consoles. He's got the full size for front of house and the M32R, the smaller one, for his streaming. Furthermore, it says I've got channels 1 through 24 coming from the stage box, and then 25 to 32 are local inputs. Okay, this is good info. I'm adding the M32R to improve my live broadcast mix, and it's connected to the front of house on the AES50B. So he has stage box coming in AES50A, and then he's going out his main console, out AES50B, into his M32R, his broadcast console. Okay, I have the M32R set to get inputs from the AES50A slot. That makes sense. He's doing all of the routing correct so far. I'm also using a Behringer P16D with multiple P16M mixers for my in-ear monitors for all the musicians. Hope that's all clear, and I say 100%. It's very clear. Good job so far. When I look at this, it's not a horrible setup in terms of confusing or confusion or complication, right? You've got a stage box feeding some of those inputs as well as local inputs into a main console. You're going out of that main console across AES50B, and you're going down to your other mixer. Also on that main console, you're feeding some P16s. Pretty standard setup. Now, he says he's got two issues. Let's keep reading and see what we find. Down at the bottom here, number one, once I have the live broadcast mix on the M32R, I need to send it back to the front of house console to get it paired with the video feed. Okay. I'll also need it to go to the local speakers of the M32R. So it sounds like he's going to have some studio monitors that he's going to have from presumably the main left and right on the M32R, the broadcast console. So in his studio, he wants to have a console, he wants to have studio monitors, but that feed, that mix that he builds, he wants to shoot that mix back up to his main console to catch up to his broadcasting stuff and send it out. So that all makes sense. It says these two mixers are about 150 feet apart. watched a video on YouTube about using the user out, but I'm not completely sure I understand. Okay, we'll dive into that. Now here's where, I did pre-read this, here's where it gets a little complicated. Look at number 2. I use the aux ins 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 to bring the audio from a CD player and my ProPresenter console, respectively. I'll need these to get to the M32R so they can be in my live broadcast mix as well. Would I use the user out on the front of house to do that? Okay, so that does start to kind of complicate things. Let's talk about normal first. Okay, normal, I'm going to go to the X32 edit software here, and let me just load a blank scene. Go to my scenes. I'm going to load a blank scene. Give this a second. And what I want to do is just kind of start from scratch. I don't want it to be complicated with what I have in my scene that was up most recently. So with that in mind, we've got a blank scene. I also figured out how to zoom in. Watch this. Ooh, we can zoom in on this thing. That's cool. All right, I do that in my day job, but it's on a Windows machine. I had to figure out how to do it on Mac. Anyway, let's talk routing real quick. I'm gonna pull up this routing box. And what we see here are the normal inputs. Now for him, he said he's got 24 inputs coming across AES50A, and the remaining 8 inputs are local. For ease of use, I'm gonna say that those are coming in local 25 to 32. If he has them local 1 through 8, then that's something different, but let's just keep it easy. 1 through 24 from the stage box, 25 to 32 coming across the local inputs. So we've got that set up. All right, that's not where things get complicated, but let's talk about the P16s for a minute. We're going to come back around to the P16s shortly, but let's talk about it right now. He is sending these signals, certain signals, back up AES50A. If we look in the AES50 tab, this shows us what signals are being sent back up to that stage box. Okay, so when we look at that over here, we've got outs 1 through 16 are going up to the stage box across AES50A. Also, look at this. The last 16 channels, which are 33 to 48. 33 to 48, those are handling your P16, the Ultranet. See this right here? Ultranet. Now we have some flexibility, and we're going to talk about that when we get down here to the B outputs, but we do have some flexibility, some things to keep in mind within all of our routing in general. So Ultranet 1 to 16, that deals with the personal monitors, the P16s. And if we come up here to Ultranet, this is where we would determine what channels, inputs, or mixes get sent back up across AES50A, back up to our stage box, and then presumably in that case to the P16s. So that's kind of a normal setup right there. We've got one stage box, we've got multiple inputs, 32 of them to be exact. They're coming into the console. We're sending some outputs, some mixes back up to stage. We're also sending the Ultranet signals. Now, it gets a little more complicated when we start to think about what are we sending to our other console. So that's the main thing we need to start with, is sending signals to our other console. Okay, we have, what he said, 32 channels. So if I look at AES50B, right here in my routing to go out AES50B into my broadcast console, we've got 48 channels we get to work with. By default, they're catching outputs and they're catching just a general use of things. In this case, how do we change this? Well, let's come over here and capture that we want AES50A 1 through 8, 9 to 16, 17 to 24. These are from our stage box, right? So the stage box is going to come in to our main console, front of house console. It's going to hit the preamps there. And those are the main preamps, by the way. A little note for you if you're not familiar with that. And then it's going to send those right back out AES50B out to the other console. So down here, this is what channels they're going out. And across the top, These are our sources. So don't forget, we still got to capture our last 25 to 32. Those are local. There we go. Now we have 16 additional channels that we are sending out, that we can send out to that other console across AES50B. So now we get to be a little bit creative. So let's think about that. We're going to send out, he mentioned using aux, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's see what he said here. He's using aux in 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's try and figure out the aux routing next. So with this in mind, we've got some flexibility that we can come down and we could just take on 33 to 40, if we slide way down here, and we map with our aux ins right here. So aux is aux out, aux in are the aux in. You can also send talkback, which is kind of nice, all within these 8 channels. But we can come down here, and if we click there, that's sending all of our auxiliary ins and talkback across 33 to 40. Okay, so we haven't had to use up any custom user routing yet at this point. So we have all of our inputs. We've now got our aux ins and talkback all being sent down to our other console. There are 8 additional channels, but I don't think we need to use those in this situation. And you might just find a generic place for them to land. There's not really an off button in here, but just kind of looking through it, maybe we just come back and capture local 1 through 8 in this situation. Presumably, they are not being used. There's no random signals that could come in. We're also not going to get caught in some crazy AES50 loop of sending a signal and sending it right back to the console in front of house. We'd like to avoid that at all costs, honestly. All right, so this is the routing on the first console and how I kind of feel like we should approach this. Now, we need to back up and capture the second console. So if I will, I'm going to go in here and go into scenes, and I'm just going to save this as a random discussion scene. So I will say front of house, and I'll just say 01. Hit the enter key. Do you want to save it? Yes. And we'll just go between that and then a broadcast, and we'll call it broadcast 02. So this is good. I'm going to load another blank scene. So let's go up here and load, click on blank, hit load. All right, so now it's going to load this blank scene. We're going to come back to our routing, and our routing is going to look stock again. All right. Now, before I dive into the secondary console, I'm just going to check the chat real quick and see, give me a second here. I'm going to check and see if we've got anybody with questions coming through in the chat yet. Thanks for touching this, Daniel says. Awesome. Happy to have you here. Happy to try and help out. This question came through, and it's I felt it was way too long to just kind of type the answer out. There's a whole lot of typing, and I just said, let's just do a live stream and kind of answer this question. Bound to be somebody else that comes up with this question, and hopefully the digital content can make it followable. Kevin, welcome in. Thanks for the encouragement that it's clear so far. All right, so now we're going to jump into console 2. Give me a second here. Jump back to this, and I can put myself back down there. Help me, I'm down in the corner. All right. It's fun when you get new toys and you get to just play around with them. Outside of the internet working, which is not a new toy. All right, let's take a peek now. Second console. All of our inputs now are coming in. Let's go over to inputs first. Everything's coming in AES50A on the secondary console. So by default, we could just go A, and we're going to get all 32 channels coming in. The downside is this. We only have 32 channels to work with. So while we can send out 48 channels, and we've got our Ultranet that we could potentially use, it's not going to support more than 32 inputs coming into the console. We don't have a way necessarily easily, I'll say, to map the aux ins. We're going to look at that. But this gets us our default 32 channels. So let's go hunting now for our auxiliary ins. I'm going to do that by coming way down here into the user in section. I'll click on user in. And now I've got some more flexibility. We do have more inputs. If we look right here, AES50A, these are sources, and here's our 33 through 48. Now we're not using the last box of 8. So if I click on 33 to 40, now we remember that in this this batch of 8 here, that input 1 or 33 is actually relating to aux in 1 on the main console. So we can go aux 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 coming from the main console. Okay, so that gets us started with just mapping them to go somewhere inside of this broadcast console. The next thing we need to do is let's go to the inputs, way back up over here. And on the inputs tab, we need to go to our aux in remap. So by default, the aux ins are set to aux ins, which are the physical connections on the back of the board. We need to now switch that. And if you come down here, we can use user in 1 to 6, way down there. If I zoom in, let's see if it works. Boom, way down there. This is on the aux ins. And that's going to take what we have set from AES50A connection. We've set it to some custom user ins. And when I click on that, in theory, and I'll say I don't have all of this gear in this studio to show you every connection working. So take this as kind of a suggestion, if you will, to go and test out in your environment with all this gear. But user in 1 through 6, this is on the broadcast console, and it is using what we mapped over here at user in 1 through 6. See, this top part is what we have in this board, and it's being sourced from somewhere over here. So while it's not going to say aux in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we just know the mapping, and that's what we've done. So in theory, that gets us now all 32 inputs from the main console plus all 6 of our aux ins from that console. All right, so I want to jump back and look at the actual problem statement, if you will. And if I look at number 2 down here, I use the aux ins 3, 4, 5, and 6. That should get, we just covered that, that should get the per presenter and the CD player coming via AES50 into this broadcast console. So that's pretty cool. All right, opening up more of the possibilities of this whole ecosystem, which is nice. Then let's jump back up to number 1 though. This says, once I have, ooh, that's the wrong button. Don't, okay. Well, I don't know what I just did in my Mac world here, but we're going to ignore that. So once I have the live broadcast mix on the M32R, they've built the mix on their broadcast console. I need to send it back to the front of house console to get it paired with the video feed. Perfect. All right, so let's jump back into this. Now we're already on the broadcast console. Let's just start back at routing, looking at inputs. The inputs are set now. We go through, we build that mix. Let's go and think about, we have to send signals back out the same way they came in, which is AES50A right there. So we're going to send them out AES50A of the broadcast board. So let's click AES50. And what are we sending out? Right now, we're sending out all of these mixes and outputs, 1 through 8, 9 to 16. Well, it's an M32R, right? We remember that it's a smaller platform. It only has 16 inputs and then 8 outputs, physical connections on the back of the board. I'm going to make an assumption that they're not using the monitor outputs on the back of the board for their studio mix of the broadcast. Meaning, if they hit the solo button, they could hear that in their headphones, but it's not going to change anything that they have in their studio monitors in their studio. Why is that important? Because we're going to take the normal left-right mix, which by default, if I come up here and I go to Out 1 to 16, on the smaller platform, and I've got a compact, which is similar to the M32R, it's only got 8 outputs. 7 and 8, by default, are the main outputs of this board. Now, if they switch them to 1 and 2, that's fine, but let's just leave it at the default settings, 7 and 8, okay? So we've confirmed now that the main mix is leaving the console on output 7 and 8, and we need to route 7 and 8 to go back up AES50A. When we look at AES50, we see that 7 and 8 are right here, coming across AES50A, 7 and 8. So that's good. That keeps things in kind of a standard default mode, really is going to help any troubleshooting down the line. All right, but we're going to save this right now as our broadcast console. So I'll come back in here, I'll come down, I'll hit save, and I'll say broadcast 01, hit the enter key. Yes, please save. All right, let's load back up the front of house console because we got to go back up there. Click OK. And we'll hit the routing button here. Before we dive into this, give me a second. I want to check on any comments or questions. So let's pipe back over here to my face and let's jump over here. Timothy says, please simplify the method of having 2 to 3 consoles together. Well, Timothy, first off, I do have a video in the description that has me discussing the settings of linking a Behringer Wing as a front of house console to a Behringer X32 as a broadcast console. I go through those settings, so you can check the description on this video. They are there right now. I can't make it any easier. It's more of just understanding how the routing is set up. That's really the best. And this video specifically is going to be one that is talking about some pretty custom settings, right? We're going past just using the normal 32 in, 32 out type concept. Otis says, howdy, I'm from Houston. Welcome in from Houston. It's hopefully a nice day out there. Daniel says, my question is, I'm using AES50A. If I'm using local out 3, which is bus 3, a monitor, and the rest of my bus outputs are being used at AES50A Digital Snake, how should I configure my user out, please? All right, let's come back to that. Let's finish with the use case that we started, and then Daniel will come back at the end and do a little bit of Q&A with that. But I appreciate you guys not just tuning in, but also being engaged and asking questions. Let's jump back and look at how we can get this last mix set up and going over to this other console. So we'll come back here. And we now have all of our inputs coming here, AES50A, we've got the local inputs. We know that they're using the aux ins, and this is where it's going to change a little bit. Somewhere we've got to come up with more channels. Okay, there's 32 in, and there's 6 aux ins. Now it sounds like they're already using 3, 4, 5, and 6 in terms of their aux ins, but I didn't hear anything about aux in 1 and 2, which somewhere we have to find 2 channels on this console. On the front of house console, we've got to find 2 channels to be able to get that mix back in that they can then send out their streaming device. Okay, remember, their streaming device is 150 feet away from their mixing console. So they're trying to stay in the digital environment and do their transition of signals across, all the fancy stuff of Cat5. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come into this front of house console. Let's go up to user in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set user in 1 to 8 as a custom setup. To do that, I'm going to come down here, say user in. And normally, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oops, 5 and 6. And if I zoom in, you'll see that we have just all of the aux ins repeated. We're going to change 1 and 2 because we don't know if they're being used, but we have to, again, find 2 channels somewhere. So I'm going to use these aux in channels, and let's zoom back out. We're going to be getting these from AES50B. If you remember, the broadcast console is connected on AES50B from the main console. So we're sending out AES50B. These signals are going to come back in AES50B. So we can come up here. We can capture 7 and 8. So let's zoom in there. All right, so AES50B 7 is our main left from broadcast. AES50B 8 is that's just a bunch to say, but 7 and 8, that's the left and right mix from the broadcast console coming back up into this main front of house desk. And now we've set them up as user in 1 and 2. And then we have aux in 3, 4, 5, and 6. Why are we going to do this? Because we're going to do another aux in remap here. So let's go back to inputs. And finally, what we get to do, same thing we did on the other desk, we're going to come down and say user in 1 to 6, and we're going to remap these. And the benefit of that is now, when we look at, let me close this and I'll look at our channels here. If I say auxiliary, if I choose aux1 and config tab, let me zoom in, look right there. aux1 is coming in from AES50B 7. All right. Now, why is that cool? Well, now you've got 2 faders that are on your main front of house console, and you can route these 2 anywhere. Now, you don't have to do this on the aux ins. My other videos that talk about this, I do it on aux ins just because it's more likely that you've got a pair of aux ins that you can work with. But you could do it on any 2 channels. So this person mentioned that they've got 24 channels from stage and that their other 8 are from locals. But if they've got some 2 channels that are not being used on their normal 32, then they could send them there. But let's just keep with this example, aux in 1 and 2. We're doing good here. So we've got that in aux in 1. Aux in 2 is coming from AES50B 08. I do want to link these. So let's click here, click the link button. Oh, I'm still zoomed in. There we go. Click OK. And now these are linked. I could pull this up to 0. What's the one thing we don't want to forget right now? Think about it for a minute. Aux in 1 and 2. This is our broadcast mix coming back into our front of house console. What's the one thing that we want to make sure we don't forget to do as we bring these faders up to 0? Well, these are not part of your front of house mix. So let's come back up here to the channel and remove this from the main left and right so that it just passes through the house console. It doesn't go out to your PA. That would be bad. All right, we're here, aux in 1 and 2. At this point, this person needs to figure out, again, how are they getting their mix out of this desk and into their streaming platform, their streaming device, if you will. So for me, I use my local XLR outputs, and then I go into an ATEM Mini at my church. So I've got XLR to 1/8 inch, they're balanced cables coming out, which keeps away any buzz and hum and goes right into my ATEM Mini. And if I was doing that, Then I could come back into routing. This is kind of the final step, and I can go into user outs. And here I get to choose what leaves my console. And I can go into user outs. Actually, let's think about this. If I'm doing XLRs, then I would make sure that my XLRs are mapped 1 through 8 for this console. And the XLR is the physical connection on the back of the board. Okay. He could do this with aux outs. That's a different process. And I've got a video that is not in the description of this video, but I can add it when we're finished. So if you're watching this on, playback, well, it'll be there. But for right now, it's not there. But it talks about the 3 ways to get a mix out of your console. So let's go to aux out, not aux out, out 1 through 16. We've got to pick a pair of these that we would want our to send out of our board. And I usually use these effects ones down here at the bottom because I don't need to send my effects mixes out. So in this case, we can come down way to the far left or right, whichever way you're looking at it. And we could choose direct out aux. We're going 1 and 2, right? That should be it. And that's going to take our auxiliary signals out of our board on 1516. And then we can do something with that. So if you're going XLRs, obviously this is the smaller, well, this is the full-size console now that we're back to. So you would have 16 outputs, but you can map them wherever you want within the routing and get them to leave the console. Just make sure to plug the cable into the right output, and you should be good at that point. So that's a bunch that we just went through. We went through bringing inputs from a stage box and local into a front of house console, and then sending those out to a broadcast console. We went to the broadcast console, and we brought in some auxiliaries from that front of house into the broadcast desk, right? Because we used the AES-50, the bigger channels, 33 and over. Then we built a mix. We sent that out to local speakers off of that M32R. We shipped those back across AES-50 to the front of house console, into auxiliaries, and then we can route those out after removing them from the main mix. That's a mouthful. That's a bunch to cover, which is why I didn't feel like typing it. Let's take a peek here. I know we've got some additional questions that came in, but let me get back over to that point and see what we've got. Otis says Dante and Dante Virtual Sound Card is good for long distance input and streaming systems. It is 100% a great viable option. You kind of get this whole other sphere through Dante that AES-50, I would say, covers kind of, but it is not as good as Dante. If you don't have the capital, though, we're right now we're finding the limits of what AES-50 can do in this setup, right? We're kind of running out of ins and outs or I/O. And if you do have Dante cards on both desks, then you've got a much bigger flexibility of what you can route and where you want it to route to. But with that flexibility comes an additional cost. So, I'm always trying to save a buck. I like a deal. Let's say I like a deal. So with that in mind, kind of put on the MacGyver hat. How can we really use the extent of all of this AES-50 routing? And like I said, I kind of think we're there right now. Let's take a look, though, at this other question that came up. This question, again, was from Daniel. And Daniel says, using AES-50A, if I'm using local out 3, which is a bus 3 monitor, and the rest of my bus outputs are being used at the AES-50A digital snake. All right, so using AES-50A, he's pushing most of his audio back up to the desk across back up to the digital snake. I guess, Daniel, I need a little bit more context. what are you trying to do with this bus 3, the local out 3 that would require custom user outs? I'm happy to answer the question. Just need a little bit more context there to be able to help you out. If anybody else has questions, feel free right now to toss them in the live chat while we're live right now. I do have a few extra minutes that we can go through and answer some questions. If you're watching this, again, just playback because you weren't able to be here live, no worries. If you've got questions, leave those in the comment section. I'm always answering questions. I love helping people out. And if you want any one-on-one help, you can go to my website. That's also linked in the description. You can fill out the contact card and we can start a conversation outside of YouTube. That's actually where this question came to me, was from a comment card or contact card. And now it's turned into a video and a live stream. So hopefully this helps answer that person's question. I don't see any further context, Daniel, coming in from you. So if you do have additional questions or want additional help, Daniel, feel free to, again, put that in the comment section, see if I can help out any way possible. But hey, listen, thanks for viewing. Thanks for checking this out and being a part of this video here. If you do have questions, again, put them in the chat, put them in the comment section, reach out to me on the contact card, and we can start that conversation outside of YouTube. As always, I'm excited to just be able to help you all out. We got people from all over the world, not just Houston here today. Last week we had some people from Denmark and other places on the other side of the world, which is pretty sweet, and the power of YouTube. So keep doing awesome things with audio. I think what we're going to do is just wrap it up here. And yeah, thanks again, Kevin. I see you. Otis, I see you there. Thanks so much. And we'll catch you guys in that next video. Peace.